it's just funny, you just knock on a door and just kind of share your thoughts with somebody. Before you know it, they're making you the medical director.
Paging Dr. Cook. Paging Dr. Cook. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR. Dr. Cook, you're wanted in the OR.
Welcome to the Prescription for Success podcast with your host, Dr. Randy Cook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Prescription for Success. I'm Dr. Randy Cook, your host for the podcast, which is a production of MD Coaches, providing leadership and executive coaching for physicians by physicians to overcome burnout, transition your career, develop as a leader, or whatever your goal might be. Visit MD Coaches on the web at mymdcoaches.com because you're not in this alone. My guest today is a well-known and highly respected figure within the specialty of vascular surgery. In addition, his name is very familiar within the discipline of chronic wound care and hyperbaric medicine. So let's hear my conversation with Dr. Robert McLafferty. And what a privilege it is today for me to be speaking with Dr. Robert McLafferty, vascular surgeon, and how do I phrase this? The originator, and I'm sure the chief of the hyperbaric medicine and chronic wound care service at Oregon Health and Sciences University in Portland, right?
Yes, it's an honor. It's an honor to join you.
Well, thank you so much for being with us, Rob. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. We are kindred spirits in the wound care world, so I'm going to be interested to get caught up on the things that have happened in the 2 years since I officially retired. But we're going to begin by talking about you and how you got started. I know that you grew up in Bangor, Maine, and I'm interested to know when you had the first inkling that you were headed for a career in medicine.
Well, I'd have to say that I had always had an interest in science as a kid. I collected everything from insects to butterflies to having little electrical kits growing up, and I had definitely gravitated to the sciences. And my dad had always thought a dentist would be a great career. And it wasn't until I had a girlfriend in high school whose mother worked in healthcare, and she looked at me in a certain way and just said, you really need to be a doctor. You will be a great doctor. And it just got me thinking about medicine. And that was probably around my sophomore or junior year in high school. And I'd always had an interest in medicine or dentistry. And then it went right to surgery. I knew at that point in time I wanted to be a surgeon. And in fact, I thought I wanted to be a pediatric surgeon. That was my goal in high school.
What do you think it was about you that your girlfriend fixated on that gave her that idea?
I don't know. I think, you go back to your old high school loves, and I had spent a lot of time over at their home, and I got to know their entire family. And I used to go, deer hunting and fishing with her father, and I'm still friends with her now. Actually, we've kept in touch, and I still keep in contact with her mom when I go back to Maine occasionally. I think she just took the time to translate it in a way that made me reflect and maybe saw some potential in me to be able to do something like that. And so once you start thinking about it, and then you start put your mind to it, you're like, well, this I can do this. So that's kind of how it evolved.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like she was a bit of a visionary, and it certainly has turned out well for you. So at the point where you matriculated at Boston College, you knew that medicine was where you were headed. Is that right?
Yeah, I hit the doors running, wanting to get into medical school from the very first day, and wanting to be a surgeon from the day I hit BC as a freshman.
I'm curious, what do you think it was at that early point? I mean, you had a lot ahead of you. at that time. But what do you think it was that made you think that surgery was right for you?
I just had loved doing things with my hands, and at the time, I thought I had a kind of a softness for kids, and I just I don't know. It's really hard to. It's kind of hard to put into words. The whole. I guess there was some romanticism behind surgery, and thinking that I was actually going to be doing something with my hands and helping someone heal in that way, and the fit was right as I finally got to medical school and then off to general surgery.
It's hard to think, I guess, at that age that it had anything to do with wisdom.
Yeah.
But obviously it was a good fit for you. And you were a Magna graduate at Boston College and made the decision to go to University of Vermont for medical school. I'm guessing you could have had your pick amongst a few different schools with that scholastic record. How'd you happen to pick Vermont?
Well, it was actually the state of, I was a resident of the state of Maine, and Maine does not have a medical school.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, they don't have, I'm pretty sure they have a DO school in Portland, but they did not have an MD school. And so at that time, in the mid-'80s, the University of Vermont had, I think, 15 designated seats for Maine residents, and Tufts University had 3. So I had, I think I had applied to maybe 10 or 15 medical schools. And as soon as I got into University of Vermont early, and as soon as I got in, I knew that's where I wanted to go. I just loved it up there. And that's how it evolved. And the way it worked was, because my parents didn't have a whole lot of money, and I had to finance my own education. And so the state of Maine paid for my tuition. And I either had to give them back time in the state and practice in Maine, or pay them back. And I ultimately ended up paying them back. And I'm not sure whether they still have that program now in the state of Maine, but it was really great for me. And in fact, 2 of my roommates were also part of that program, and both are practicing in Maine, one in pediatrics and the other in radiology, that we just happened to be in the same house together in medical school.
Yeah. And I meant to ask you earlier, I hate to backtrack here, but I'm curious, it sounds like from what you're saying that there weren't really any medical influencers in your family. There were no doctors, nurses, those sorts.
I'm the first physician in my family, and not the first to have a graduate degree. I would say that I had peripheral exposure to medicine. My mother was a hospital administrator for many, many years growing up, and my parents divorced early, but she worked her way up through the ranks in the Humana Corporation and was transferred to several different cities. And I got to see some of it through her eyes. And then on my father's side, my grandfather, his father, owned a small town drugstore in northern Maine. I mean, the classic privately owned Rexall Pharmacy.
Right.
And had it for over 70 years. My father's older brother took it over, and they were both pharmacists. So there was a little bit of medicine mixed in there. But as far as anybody in the family being an MD, I was the first.
And getting you back to medical school, once there, it sounds like, from what you're telling me, even from the very beginning, you were very confident that you were right where you needed to be.
Yeah, I would have to say that I was completely devoted to getting into medical school. In fact, I had a wonderful time in undergraduate at Boston College and good friends, and but I feel I worked pretty hard, studied a lot, but also had a lot of fun. But everything I did in undergrad was dedicated to getting into medical school. In fact, I can remember there used to be this. I think it was some sort of counselor or pre-med advisor for BC. And I used to drive that guy crazy because I'd meet with him all the time. And you could actually get this like little evaluation that you could give your professors that would then go to him to help write a recommendation for medical school. And I actually made a point to meet personally face to face with every single one of my professors at the end of the class to tell them how important it was that I went to medical school and have them fill this out and turn it in.
I bet that got their attention.
Yeah, well, I was just, I just really, really, really wanted to go to medical school. I was consumed with it at the time, very passionate about it.
Well, that certainly comes through in the conversation. And the interesting thing to me at this point is you're a native New Englander. You've really been staying pretty close to home up to this point. And then comes time to pick a place for your postgraduate education, and you decide to go all the way to the other side of the country to Portland, Oregon. So what went into that decision?
It's a great question. So in my medical school, it was the last 2 years, like I think most medical schools, they encouraged you, particularly the last year, to kind of go visit other places and do rotations. And I came to Oregon to do a rotation in general surgery. And at the time, I had it was actually my wife to be at the time. She came as well, and we were seeing each other. She was in my class. And we came to Oregon, and interestingly, we did not have the best experience as medical students in our fourth year rotations here. In fact, it's incredibly ironic how these twists and turns in life take you. But the two of us went into the couples match, and we ranked probably, I don't know, maybe somewhere between 10 and 15 places. And at that time, in the late 80s, surgery, it was surgery and OBGYN. And we did not rank Oregon because we just, even though we liked the city and the place, we just, as I have to say that as medical students, we had some serious tunnel vision at the time. And the day before the match, we found out that we did not match. Probably one of the lowest days in my medical career.
I bet.
Yeah, and but this is a great story of how you can create these hardships and turn them into opportunities. And at the time, I can still remember the program director of OHSU calling Erica and myself up and saying, "Would you like a preliminary spot, the both of you, in surgery?" And we said, "Hell yeah. We'll take a preliminary spot. We need a job." So we graduated from medical school, and at least we had a job for a year as an intern. So,
right.
So Erica and I came out to Oregon, and I just, she did a year of surgery and applied for the OBGYN program at OHSU and got in. And I just worked my tail off as an intern, and I got a categorical spot at OHSU and absolutely loved the residency. And it's almost like I couldn't have been in a better place to do my residency, working with Don Trunke and so many other
really
great people in surgery. I mean, it just changed my life. Changed my life.
Great story.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody in the medical world in this country that doesn't remember match day.
Yeah.
And
especially Eric and I that day.
Fortunately for me, and I don't think it had anything to do with my level of brilliance or my desirability or anything of that nature, but I matched with my number one choice. But there were a dozen or so people in the room that were just incredibly talented, brilliant people that didn't. And the despair was just so unbelievably apparent. And nowadays, you add to it the couples match. I can't imagine the level of despair that the two of you must have been feeling for at least a day or two.
Yeah, I mean, it was... we both did well in medical school. We weren't at the top of our class, but, at the time it was very competitive residencies, and you've got to match both.
That's right.
Yeah, it's either both or none. So looking back, it wasn't too surprising, but I'm actually glad it happened the way it happened
I
because
bet you are.
everything, I mean, I just loved doing my residency here. Really a wonderful place.
Apart from the Department of Surgery, what is it about Portland that you found so desirable?
Well, in the 90s and even today, Portland and the entire state of Oregon is just a very special place with regards to just the livability of the city, the closeness of the coast, the closeness of Mount Hood and the National Forest. There's within an hour's drive, not even that, 40-minute drive, there's 500 wineries in the Willamette Valley. It's just a really amazing place. And it was at that time in the early 90s, it was having a kind of a foodie renaissance, and the city was just getting a lot of great press. It hasn't had the best press, over the last couple of years during COVID.
Sure.
But interestingly, me living less than 2 miles from the epicenter of a lot of what was hitting the news, I often didn't even know it was going on. So it just kind of shows you the differences in how the media can play something while in real life at times it may not be the reality.
I'm not surprised to hear that.
Yeah.
At all, because we could do an entire show on just exactly the nature of the news. But we want to make this about you and getting back to your intended purpose. When you began, when you got into your internship, or at least your first year, did it become evident right away that vascular was where you wanted to go?
No. I was still very interested in pediatric surgery. And I didn't have a guaranteed spot for categorical towards the end of internship. It was kind of a nail biter. I actually took one of my week vacations to interview for second year positions, I think at 3 or 4 other places.
Just to make sure you didn't get overconfident.
Yeah, and someone dropped out of the program. Actually, 2 people dropped out, and there were 2 preliminaries that got spots, and I was one of them, thank God. And Karen Devaney, who is the residency director, saw something that was worth keeping at OHSU, and I can't thank her enough for that choice she made to keep me in the residency program. So
well, not only did they keep you in the residency program, but you stayed there through a couple of fellowships and got qualified for your vascular boards, which, it sounds like you were more than happy to stay right there in that area.
Yeah, and 2 things happened in pediatric. 2 things happened. I did pediatric surgery rotation my second year, and I realized that I did not have the right personality fit to have 3 patients instead of 1 in pediatric surgery. And it just took,
I'm going to let you go ahead and expound on that, because there may actually be people in the audience that don't understand what that means. But tell the story.
Not having kids at that time in my life, we were in the classic training period of residency. We were working over 120 hours a week with 1 day off a month. This was way before they made all the changes in general surgery.
Yeah, and you felt fortunate to have a job, right?
Yeah, absolutely. and still had a great time and had fun, at the time. And when I did pediatric surgery, the attendings were present often, particularly in the operating room, but the chief resident was running the show and the junior resident was taking care of the ward. And you were the point man with the patient and the parents.
Right.
You were often the point man or person. And I can remember, oh my goodness, and this isn't a criticism to the amazing attendings I worked with, because that's just the way surgery was back then. I can remember there was like an 8-year-old that was killed in a car accident, or not killed, but basically brain dead, came in essentially brain dead and was on the ventilator. And I was a second-year resident. And I talked to the attending at home, told them that the ICU said, that this poor kid is brain dead. He's not showing any function on the ventilator. And I can remember going in as a second year and telling those parents myself that, their son was dead. Mm-hmm. And, and it was incredibly hard. And I knew that kind of in that rotation that this particular specialty of surgery was not the best fit for me, having two other patients besides the one that you were actually taking care of. And once you're a parent, as I am now, you begin to understand that. And, and getting back to your original question about how did I gravitate towards vascular, that happened as a third-year resident when I was doing my VA rotation. I think we gravitate towards people that we tend to identify with kind of from a personality trait basis. We like the specialty. All the specialties have kind of different types of personality traits that are attracted to those types of specialties.
So true.
And especially in, maybe in all types of jobs. And when I was working on vascular, I loved the fact that, you could operate almost anywhere in the body. It was very technical. I like the fact that you followed the patients for life. I like the fact that there was this new evolving catheter-based technologies that was coming up. I like the fact that you could do vascular medicine as well as vascular surgery. And the attendings, I just really identified with. And they changed my life. When I did a year of research after my third year of residence, I always like to say that the 5 most influential people in my life were my mother and father, and then my 3 attendings in vascular surgery. When I did research, I mean, they changed my life in terms of
that's profound.
Pursuing a career in academic surgery. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians, for physicians, to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests. Whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics, Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview. So you stayed right there, right there where you had learned to love being at home in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, did my vascular fellowship at OHSU.
Did 2 fellowships and comes the time when you're all finished up and you make the move to Springfield, Illinois. Considering how much I know you were enamored with the state of Oregon, I'd like to know more about that decision.
You know, it's funny. I always like to say I came to Oregon a single man. even though I was in the couples match. And Erica came with me, and she got into OBGYN. But when I left Oregon, I was married. I had 2 dogs and 2 kids. So in 8 years, it was a very formative 8 years.
I'll say.
Yeah, very formative. And so I remember John Porter, who's a very well-known vascular surgeon, now no longer living, had called me into his office, and he said, "You need to look at the job at SIU. You need to go out there and interview." I said, "Yes, sir, we'll do it."
This is Southern Illinois University for the audience.
Yes, Southern Illinois University in Springfield. The undergraduate campus is in Carbondale, but the medical school is in Springfield, which is the capital. So I flew out there, and
do you know what led him to be so forceful with that recommendation?
I think he knew that the program had academic potential. And Roland Foltz was the chair at the time, very well-known chair in education. And, SIU is a relatively young program.
Yeah, it is.
I think the medical school was formed in the early 70s. And, Roland Foltz came in as the first chair and brought all these Wunderkids in as division chairs. And I'm embarrassed that I'm blanking on the name of the division chair of vascular right now. Maybe it'll come to me. And then he was stepping down, and Kim Hodgson, who's a very well-known vascular surgeon, took over when I went out there. But when I went out, I noticed that, hey, there's support for research here, and there's I'm going to get to operate, and I'm also going to get to learn endovascular. So that was in 1998. The endovascular world was taking off in vascular surgery. It was a very tormented time in our profession, because there was a lot of old school vascular surgeons who said this should be done by radiologists or interventional radiologists, and there was a lot of new school. And I came from an old school program, but then I went to the new school program and learned all my catheter-based skills. And Dr. Porter was right. So, and my wife at the time was able to get a job full-time in OBGYN. And so...
Now, was she in private practice, or did she stay in academics as well?
She stayed in academics as well. In fact, she's still there. She's the program director for the residency program, and she's been there since '98, and she's doing an outstanding job. Basically, raised my kids in the Midwest and wouldn't change it at all. I was just absolutely loved living in Springfield, and great place to raise a family. Just a wonderful place to raise a family.
And sounds like it was really exceptionally good for you as well. I mean, you were a full professor within 5 years, and I gather really developed your chops as a researcher in that environment. So no complaints, right?
No complaints. Absolutely loved it. Gary Dunnington took over as the chair when Roland Foltz stepped down. He's now the chair at Indiana University. Gary Dunnington was probably, my main mentor at SIU as a young faculty member. And I can remember 2 years in to my tenure there, I was there for 15 years, and the chairman of the department comes into my office and he says to me, "Rob, are you available to play golf on Thursday afternoons regularly?" And I said, and here we are. We're in the midst of, this is very traditional academics. I'm training fellows. We got residents. We got, we're doing research. We're operating our brains out, just having a great time. And I said, yes, sir. I am available. And I look back and I said, boy, everybody that Gary Dunnington asked to play golf with him, he basically asked, I think, about 6 young faculty members, all assistant professors. And, there was always 4 of us available on a third if we weren't traveling or on vacation or something.
Yeah.
And that was his way of building commitment. That was his way of mentoring. I'll never, for probably 10 years, I was playing golf on Thursday afternoons with the chairman and 2 other faculty member, and we talk about things in the department. And myself and all of these other young faculty members are all now either chairs or division chiefs. And
That's pretty impressive.
And all of us were the highest RVU producers in the department. I was the vice chair for clinical operations. I saw all the numbers. And
that's very impressive.
And it just was like, you can kind of work hard and play hard and relax hard. You can do those things. And Gary always used to say, he would say to the faculty, I don't want you to be the best in the world at something at the cost of everything else in your life. I want you to be good at things. I want you to be good with your family. I want you to be good at surgery. I want you to be a good community person. You don't have to be the best. He was just an amazing chair. We had, I think, 7 full-time faculty at the time. It was a small department with a large contingent of community-based surgeons that were assisting with the residency. And when he left for IU, a year before I left, I don't want to exaggerate, but it was somewhere between 60 and 65 full-time faculty in the department. He was a recruiting machine to Springfield, Illinois. And at least half of them were women too, which, to his credit, he was a visionary in that regard too.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, I'm envious. I wish that I had been around someone like that in my formative days. And not to try to take over the story, but I'll give you a little personal anecdote here.
Sure.
I did my surgery training in a place called Augusta, Georgia, and I wouldn't play golf because I was afraid if somebody saw me having fun, they might think I was lazy.
Exactly.
So, would that I had the advice that you got.
Yeah.
So, and not that my chairman was a bad guy. It's just that he didn't invite me to play golf on Wednesdays, but that's another story. But, well, man, I'm telling you, you just keep landing in the right place. And after that 15 years, you made the decision to go back to Portland. Is that because you were seeking another opportunity, or did they recruit you?
Well, so Gary Dunnington stepped down as chair and took the job at IU a year prior to me leaving. Literally, when he announced that he was leaving to the faculty, that same day, the dean sent out an email saying that we have a lot of really talented internal candidates. I want to do an internal search first for chair. Mm-hmm. And I was, full, and you had to be a full professor.
Right.
So I was a full professor, probably now 6 years in. And just, I was really at the peak of my practice. I was doing tons of research. I was operating a lot. I was involved in a lot of community and administrative work, which I was really loving. And I was the only faculty member that applied for the job that wasn't a division chief. So I think five division chiefs applied and myself, and went through the interview process, which was, it was fun. I enjoyed it, actually. And the 2 finalists were myself and a very good friend of mine who I played golf with on Thursdays, Mike Neumeister, who became the chief of plastic surgery. And I didn't get the job, and Mike got the job. He well-deserved, well-known plastic surgeon internationally. He is still the chair there. And when I didn't get the job, I got an email within it's like one door closes, and before you know it, another one opens. Mm-hmm. And I got a email, or maybe I saw a friend at a meeting who was on the faculty at OHSU, Erica Mitchell, and she had said, hey, Dr. Edwards is stepping down from chief at the VA. You should look at that job. And I said, well, I think I might. My kids are in high school now. My wife at the time and I were going to be empty nesters coming up. And so Portland was still very near and dear to us. So I went out and interviewed and, was able to join the faculty at OHSU. And do some part-time work over there, and they hired me as chief of surgery. And then and at the time, the hope was to kind of transition Erica to coming out, and then my kids ended up going off to college, and the rest is kind of history. I've been here in Oregon since 2013.
So that was I was interested in what happened with your kids. So they were both able to finish high school back in Illinois.
Yeah, in fact, I was flying back every other or every third weekend. It's funny when your kids are in high school and they got driver's licenses. Even when you're home, they're not around very much.
Yeah, they don't see you.
So
that's exactly right.
I actually felt like I was able to not miss too many of their events and things going back for 3-day weekends every 2 to 3 weeks. And then, take family vacations as well,
Sure.
So
do either of the pair of them have any interest in medicine at all?
Yes. Well, my son is actually a first-year medical student at Tulane Medical School right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And my daughter, who was kind of toying between medicine and dentistry, is now a first-year dental student at Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal. Very successful kids. That's good for you.
Yeah. Well, it's we could do a whole other podcast just on, kids and
you bet.
and their journeys themselves, but I'm very proud of them. When they told me their acceptances, I cried.
I bet.
I'm just so happy.
Yeah.
Just so happy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So let's get you back in Portland, chief of the VA, and back in what had to have seemed like going back home. Tell us the story of what happened next.
Well, I joined the VA, and I loved working in the VA. I was the director of the operative division as well as the chief of surgery, and the VA there is definitely in the top 10 busiest VAs in the nation. There's about 150 or 152 VA hospitals, and they have these 1A hospitals, which are their tertiary care hospitals, the ones that are primarily associated with medical schools. And, we were doing liver transplant. They still are doing liver transplant. At the time, they were doing between 200 and 300 hearts. The interesting thing about the VA job that I took was we were over a lot of non-traditional departments. So the dentistry reported to me, the chief of dentistry, the chief of ophthalmology, the chief of gynecology reported to me.
Right.
And so what was wonderful about that is I learned so much about just how hospitals run and how ophthalmology service runs and how a dentistry service runs. And while I was in that role, I also got my MBA, which was just probably one of the funnest things I've ever done when it comes to learning. It was a combined classroom and virtual 3-year program between Portland State University and Oregon Health and Science University.
I'm fascinated by that. What was it that made it fun?
Well, it taught you a lot of things that you don't learn in medical school. You learned more about the business side of medicine. You learn more about the leadership side of medicine. You learn about the economics. You learn about program development and project management. You learn just how to manage. You learn about finance, all kinds of different things. It was all healthcare based.
Well, I was just going to ask you: was this particular MBA was apparently aligned with a focus on healthcare delivery?
Yes, yeah. It wasn't an MHA, which is Masters of Healthcare Administration. It was an MBA with all the MBA requisites, but all focused on healthcare, which was
I
really
can see how
a lot of fun.
That would have made it a lot easier to swallow than some of the other executive MBA programs that I've seen.
And this one, I can literally remember doing things at my job while I was in this getting this degree. I mean, we were learning things that I like in project management things I didn't know about, and how to apply those things to getting things done. So it was fun, a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it was. And then the next thing that came up was your interest in chronic wound care, or I guess that was where it came up? Was
Yeah,
was
I was.
chronic wound care something that you had an interest in for a while?
I was the medical director of the wound care center in Springfield, and
I
was
see. Yeah.
at the time when I was there, and it was Diversified Clinical Services Associated. That was a wound care company, a national wound care company that was.
I'm very familiar with it. I was on their
Yeah.
teaching faculty for a while.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. So you kind of know how they evolved into Hillogics, which is I think they combined with American Wound Care or something. I think something like that when they combined the two companies.
Yeah. National Wound Healing.
Yeah, National Wound Healing. Yes, they combined the two to form Hillogics. And so I enjoy wound care. Vascular surgeons see a lot of wounds. And so when I came to be the chief at the VA, OHSU did not have hyperbaric therapy or a wound care center. And this is a 700 bed hospital. And so I went and met with the C-suite. I went with the chief operating officer just because I wanted to share with him that they were missing an opportunity here.
You bet. Yeah, huge opportunity.
And, there was maybe one other hospital that had hyperbaric oxygen at the time. And this is the main tertiary care center for all of Oregon. And so it's just funny, you just knock on a door and just kind of share your thoughts with somebody. And before you know it, they're working with Hillogics. And before you know it, they're making you the medical director. And
there you go.
And so I was the medical director over there while I was chief at the VA. It took about 3 years to get the program up and running, the contracts and the actual center built. And it opened in December of 2016. And so that's kind of my evolution to wound care. And I still do open vascular surgery and endovascular surgery and do all those things as well. But my transition out of the VA was probably a little earlier than I had wanted. But I think, there's something to be said for, I don't want to use the term necessarily of burnout. I wasn't necessarily burned out, but I had been there almost 7 years as chief. And I was approached by OHSU to see if they wanted me to kind of work out in a small partner hospital that they had out on the coast. And, I felt like I had a host of major accomplishments at the VA and a good relationship with my team. And another opportunity had arisen. And I said, well, I'll just make the change, and let someone else take the helm. And I will say, the VA is it's an amazing system. They take very good care of the veterans. It's a very accountable organization. But one of the things it struggles with, and I think it still does struggle with, is the stability of its leadership in the hospitals and in the integrated service networks in the VISNs. In the time that I was at the VA, I was there for 6.5 years. We had 7 CEOs of the hospital, seven directors,
goodness.
7 directors. And I had my boss, the chief of staff, change 5 times. So that's challenging because you got to, when you're trying to build like a hybrid room, or you're trying to buy a robot for your docs, you got to tell that story over and over and over to different teams, right? To get the funding. When a new CEO comes in or a new director comes in, they're not just going to agree to everything the previous one was doing. So you got to tell your story again. I just felt like I had accomplished what I wanted to accomplish, and here's a new opportunity. And, frankly, my career it's winding down a little bit. I mean, I'm, the average surgeon's career is about 30 years, from 35 to 65 or 32 to 62. And I just turned 58. So I'm kind of on the other side of the bell curve now and loving it. Yeah.
Well, that's good. So have you got a timeline set? This may be something that you don't want to disclose, but what's the strategy going forward?
As we get older, health is, I think, a very important part, factors into our psyche, and also wanting to be able to, just do some other things in your life and contribute in other ways that that you haven't been able to do. And so I think I'll probably retire, or at least semi-retire in maybe when I'm 62, maybe, stop, maybe step out of the operating room at 62 and, maybe just begin to work and do some, office-based procedure stuff and maybe some clinic stuff part-time. And then, do some things that, do some traveling, spend some time with my kids, and just begin another journey, do some other things.
Somehow I don't foresee you sitting on the porch and watching the flowers grow.
No. In fact, this Desmond got me interested in this MD coaches, and I think it's a fascinating program, and very interested in looking at getting the training for to potentially be a coach.
Well, it's been a very satisfying transition for me, and I have to say you certainly have the experience and I think the temperament to be a very good coach. So I hope you'll keep it in mind. I think you'd be good at it.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely.
Well, Rob, listen, I have really enjoyed hearing about the story of the trajectory of your career. A lot of inspiring information in there, and I bet we're going to have some listeners that get a little jolt of inspiration from that. I'm sure we will. But we're at the point in the program that I look forward to the most, and that is when I get out of your way. So I'm going to close my mic, and Dr. Robert McLafferty is going to give us his personal prescriptions for success.
Well, thanks so much. I've made a little list here of notes, and they're in no particular order of importance, but I wanted to share them with all of you when I reflect back on my own career in terms of what I think has helped make me successful, and I think more importantly, happy. The things I've noted down are listen more, ask questions, and talk less. That's something that probably in the last 10 to 15 years of my career has paid off immensely compared to when I was a young buck in surgery. Under number 2, I have, if you want something in medicine and maybe anything in life, you, and I have you all capitalized, you have to lead it, which means nobody's going to come necessarily out of the goodness of their hearts and do it for you. But if you do it, people will join you in doing it. And in that same vein, I think we need to have resilience because there's going to be constant setbacks. And if you want to take something to the finish line, you got to be ready for those steps backwards, but commit to taking things to the finish line. It can be done. I'm a big fan of collaboration. I think it's, for the most part, 99.9% of the time, or 100% of the time, a really good thing. Collaboration always pays off, always. And you can't be afraid in the business of medicine to make yourself vulnerable, meaning reaching out with an olive leaf to maybe a competitor to see how you can collaborate from an education standpoint. It's always a good thing. I think in our world of medicine, we need to invite evaluation, particularly a 360 evaluation. And we need to know how our peers and our team at every level, both vertically and horizontally, is viewing us. We need to invite that. Coaches and mentors are very important, but I also think you should use them when you need them and not be afraid to ask for help. You don't necessarily have to have the coach all the time, but in my career transitions, I would seek out a coach and meet with that person, someone who really had nothing to do with, no skin in that game. And it's always been very helpful for me. I'm a big fan of recognizing hard work, sacrifice, showing appreciation, and giving shout outs. I have something personally that I do called thank you cards on Monday, just like Jimmy Fallon does on The Tonight Show. He writes those little joking thank you cards. Well, I have right on my desk here a box of thank you cards. And when Monday rolls around, I will handwrite a thank you card to somebody. I did that as chief of surgery, whether it was a nurse, administrator. It can be anybody that kind of charmed you or did something for you that week or that quarter or year. And those things make a huge difference. I think it's important to read. I can't emphasize the importance of reading. And whether it's a leadership book, I'm a big fan of nonfiction, adventure stories like nonfiction. And if you want my favorite leadership book of all time, which also has a lot of historical nonfiction action, is a book called Shackleton's Way. It's about the explorer Shackleton trying to make it to the South Pole, and these two social scientists who are women analyze his actions and how he got every man back alive from that 2-year awful experience in the South Pole. It's a great leadership book. Just a few more here. Never Stop Learning in a Formal Way. We've talked about the MBA. There's so many programs out there to become a part of, whether you pay for them or being free. I think it's important to begin to accept and know that medicine is a very stressful business. And if you walk in every day thinking change is the norm, it's going to be stressful, and try to accept that in your soul, it makes your day a little bit bigger, a little bit better. And the last two I have listed are be present. Opportunities are always around the corner. I can't emphasize in my career that just making that extra little effort of being present at the meeting, or speaking up when you had a thought, or listening to other people, all of a sudden a door is going to open. It will open and make your career more fulfilled. And lastly, I just think that it's important that we always take time for ourselves, exercise, make sure you take your vacations, cultivate hobbies, and cultivate the relationships outside of medicine that are close to you. And those are all my quick, many prescriptions for success.
Well, they are very thoughtful and very thought-provoking, Rob, and I really appreciate you being here and taking the time to share with us. It just occurred to me, I got so involved in the conversation before that there were a couple of things that I wanted to ask you about, and I'm going to go ahead and ask you to weigh in on this. When I looked in your list of non-professional interests, there were several things, and a couple I wanted to ask you about. I understand that you're a bit of a musician. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I picked up the guitar in high school, was self-taught, and I started just writing songs in high school.
Not just a musician, but a composer. I'm impressed.
So I started writing songs, and maybe it was all that young, Romeo and Juliet passionate love I had for my girlfriend at the time. And then I wrote a lot of songs in college, and I wrote a few in medical school. And then residency began, and raising a family. And that took a little bit of a pause then. But since I came back to Oregon, I have reunited with my friend, the guitar, and have written a lot of new songs. And through very weird, fortuitous ways, I've come to meet many musicians in the city of Portland. And so in April of 2019, I actually brought them into a recording studio and paid them for their work, and they recorded an album of all the music that I had written and composed.
Wow. You're pretty serious about this.
Yeah, we had two recording sessions, and the album was just released on all the major streaming sites nationally and internationally, I guess you would say, on October 1st, 2021.
Outstanding.
Yeah, it's called Crossing Lines is the name of the album, and it's the Colin Trio and Friends, songs by Rob McLafferty. That's the name of the album.
How about that?
Yeah, and I'm almost done my second album here. I have to say, Randy, it was one of the funnest things I have ever done is going into a recording studio, not knowing anything about how a recording studio works, watching the musicians make this like with your music. I mean, it was just like one of those bucket list things, and it sounds egotistical, but I just loved the experience. It was so much fun.
It sounds really, really cool.
Yeah.
And perhaps this is your post-clinical career path. Who can say? But then
Yeah.
the other thing, I also noticed that you like to cook. You want to tell us about your cuisine specialty and what I might have for dinner if I come to Rob's house?
Well, the change is constant with me. So yeah, I love to cook, and I'm not much of a baker. I've always felt that baking takes a huge amount of effort for little payoff.
Yeah, cooking is artistry and baking is chemistry, as I always say.
Yeah, and so I'm more of I'd say a barbecue griller and a person who just kind of comes up with maybe adding to recipes. But more interestingly, over the last couple of years, I have really delved into the nutrition books.
Uh-huh.
And in March of this year, I went vegan. I went plant-based only.
Did you really?
I did.
Wow.
I did. And if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have said, go jump in the lake. I'd never be plant-based only, never be vegan. And I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, that's impressive.
And I don't think I'll ever go back. And I'm not saying this from a political in a political way about animals. Although there's probably there's data out there showing that that maybe not the best thing for the planet in terms of methane from cattle and whatnot. But
absolutely, yeah. But
from a health standpoint, just feel great. I really feel great. Yeah.
Well, that's very impressive.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad I asked you to hang around and answer those questions because both of those subjects are fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, Rob, I want to give you the opportunity to let our audience know where they can find you, whether it be emails, websites, Twitter handles, or whatever you have to offer.
Well, I'm pretty easy to find on if you just put my name, because my last name's relatively unique. It's not MC capital C, but MC capital L. I'm on Twitter occasionally, and if you search me, you'll be able to find my name. And then obviously I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and most of those things are personal. But if people have questions, they certainly could email me at my academic address, which is my last name without the TY. So it's MCLAFFER. That's MCLAFFER at OHSU.edu. If people have questions or insights or comments or any critique, I'm happy to hear it.
Dr. Robert B. McLafferty, thank you so much for spending some time with us today on Prescription for Success.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoyed it very much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you'd like to learn more about today's guest, head on over to our Patreon page where you can access exclusive content, including a rapid-fire Q&A session with our guests and more. Never want to miss a future episode? Visit our website at rxforsuccesspodcast.com to subscribe. You can even offer your very own personal prescription for success while you're there. As always, we appreciate a review and a 5-star rating, as well as suggestions for future show topics. And finally, special thanks to Ryan Jones, who created and performs our theme music. That's all we have for now, so be sure to fill your prescription for success with my next episode.